Hey folks, everything new under the sun. I want to quickly talk about blind spots, and I did this poll on the community page on my channel, and I got a surprising response, actually, a very honest response, I believe. And the website in the background, I'm going to talk about that in a sec. But the question was about the Ohio explosion and the ongoing, effectively, the poisoning of the air and the water. Were you prepared for it? And for people in Ohio, especially around Palestine, Ohio, the stuff has hit the fan in terms of kind of worst case scenario. I don't know what else you would call it. They can't live there. They have to move. They literally have to bug out, take their animals, take everything they can, and get out of there. Otherwise, there's severe health consequences. Um, so much so that indeed animals are dying, and some of the liquids there, I guess the vinyl chloral, whatever it is, was actually used as an agent, a chemical in was it World War One, to cause trouble for people, chemical agent, and so that's in the air. And like I say, that's killing chickens and dogs, and lots of interviews and such about it online. But if that occurred, uh, would you have been prepared for it? And that's the real question. And this is a blind spot, a potential blind spot. And I think we found a blind spot for pretty much everybody looking at this. So the questions were, or was, were you prepared to bug out due to the chemicals in the air and the fallout? And this is something that could happen any day near anybody. This includes natural disasters as well, where your house is destroyed, you need to get out of there, or there's some other criminal activity, you have to get out there, or some big event. It doesn't necessarily mean World War III or even some massive natural disaster. A lot of things could happen just like this train derailing. 15% of you responded, I am prepared for this sort of disaster. Now, I'd be interested to know how you were prepared. Do you have, a month worth of water stored up? Do you have life straws? Do you have the Alexa Pure Water purifier? And if you have the water purifiers or the life straws, do they actually work when the water is contaminated with this particular agent? I don't know if any of us know that. Maybe there's some experts in the chat there or whatever that you want to comment on it. But do they work against something that has this chemical or these chemicals in it? It might be too far gone at that point. A lot of these life straws and Alexa Pure water purifiers take out some of the basic bacteria to make it safe enough, but they may not scrub things like these harsh chemicals. Number two is interesting. And I think a lot of us could really answer number two. 11% of you responded, I didn't see this coming. And I will admit, I did not see this coming at all. If I was in Palestine, I probably wouldn't have seen this coming. Although there are rail disasters, and they're fairly regular, although not necessarily often. They do happen all the time for various reasons. But a lot of us didn't think that we would have to bug out. The train would crash. Maybe there's an oil cleanup or something. But they come and deal with it. And not often do they have a massive fire lit on purpose, which basically makes a mushroom cloud of caustic acid and chemicals and vapor, to the point where you could actually die if you stick around. So that doesn't happen often. 7% of you responded, I have enough options for this sort of thing. So that may include bugging out or having enough water to hunker down, or closing your windows so that the chemicals don't come in. And I guess that's what a lot of people are doing. They're just hunkering down inside their house, and that is probably the recommended way in terms of FEMA suggestions, emergency management suggestions by your government. In that case, they don't want people on the roads clogging up the roads. They're going to say, stay at home, hunker down, close all your doors and windows. Just like in the case of maybe a volcano where there's a lot of ash falling out, they're going to tell you to stay home and don't open any windows or doors. And that is an option, at least for the short term. But at some point, you're going to need to go out. So 67% of you said, I am not prepared at all for this sort of disaster. And I would have to say, that for me also would be the one I would have checked off. Since it has occurred, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, where I live, is this a problem? Now, trains are not a problem, but could something else happen? Could the Irving oil retainment facility. What do you call it? The big barrels where they bulk store the oil. If that were to get into the groundwater, would I have an option there? I'm assuming that my well water and spring water and river water will be uncontaminated enough to where I can live off that should something go wrong. But again, you can't predict these. This is asymmetrical warfare. No longer are we talking about bombs and airplanes flying through the air where it's not really going to affect the water. Now you have this asymmetrical warfare where there's terrorist events. There's things coming that you hadn't seen or thought about before. And I said before, this is why you need to be hedged for any number of things occurring, because we don't have any idea what could be occurring. So one of them is, have a week's worth of water stored up in bottles. Do you have that? You'll want your water purifier, but is that going to work if all the water is poisoned? Or maybe if all the water is radioactive, if you live near a nuclear power plant, you're not going to be able to use a life straw. You may have to get away from there as soon as possible. Do you have a getaway vehicle? And do you have a getaway path? Where I am, there's not a lot of places to go, roads out of town, if you will. So getting out of town when there's thousands and thousands of other people trying to get out of there may not be an option. So again, I think in Palestine, I would have just, picked up the family and got out of there. But you know what? The government didn't really tell people, maybe for a week, that they should be getting out of there. They didn't. No one really knew what the chemicals were, and so how soon will you get information that you need to get out of there? You may not know. You may be there for a week until the government decides to give you some information as to, well, maybe these chemicals are harmful, so maybe you want to think about moving out. So be aware of that. Listen to what the government says, but on the other hand, question everything, and take precautions. Preemptive sorts of things, so that if this thing does happen, and there is potential for chemical leaks, maybe a good idea to, drive over to grandma's house or something and stay there for a little while if you're able to. Not a lot of people are able to, and that's going to be a tough situation, and it's going to be different for everybody. But I would not have been prepared for that. I am not prepared for that. I have to admit, I'm relying on my springs and river for water, and I don't really store a lot of fresh water. So if something happens to the groundwater, I'm out of luck at that point. I have to get out of here, and I have several means, several vehicles, EMP proof and otherwise. One of the EMP proof vehicles I have is an old 1974 Volkswagen Beetle, which isn't legal on the road, but in a pinch, in an emergency, an EMP would not take that out, and I'd be able to get out of town. So just looking at having different options, have different things, know what you have and how you might use them. If this happens, I could repurpose this particular item or hard asset to do what I need it to. So you need different options, and you need to be, I guess, being wise and thinking on your feet about what options do I have based on the available things at my disposal. So I want to give you that information. Now, this website as well, talking about blind spots that you may have, and I'm not sponsored or anything. I just think it's an interesting website, ground.news, and it provides left and right articles. So articles that are published on the left, the liberal, and the right, the conservative sides, and it attempts to give you how much coverage is in the left media, and how much coverage is in the right media or center. So this one is 67% left coverage. So the liberals are covering this, whereas the conservatives aren't really covering this information about this liberal MP. Right? So one interesting thing it has is this blind spot section, where if you're a conservative, maybe you have a blind spot that you're not paying attention to liberal news, and you may miss something that's important. So check that blind spot. It's always good to be aware of what blind spots we have, so that and check out ground.news, because this is just across the board, not having anything to do with survival or prepping, but just in your news media consumption in general, gathering intelligence, gathering data points from news, you need to know that you may have a blind spot. If you're following a conservative website all the time, you may be missing some stuff that may be of use to you. If you're following liberal websites, you may be missing stuff that may be useful. So just another a comment to you about keep your eyes wide open, listen to everything, and question everything. I'll leave it there, guys. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.